My name is Lisako Jones McKyer. Most people just call me Lisako McKyer. And I'm an assistant professor here in health and kinesiology in the Division of Health Education. And I have a joint appointment at the School of Rural Public Health in the Social and Behavioral Health Department. My undergraduate training is in psychology from Cal State University at Northridge, where I had a special emphasis on pediatric and developmental psych. Then I went to do doctoral studies at Indiana University in the clinical psychology department, in the clinical psych, where I specialized in pediatric psych, and I was minoring in public health. Prejudice, I think, is a belief system that we learn. Much of it may be driven by some of our old ancestral stuff that you deal with. Like we see a big scary animal and we're probably afraid of it for good reason. But much of the more social prejudice that we see, I think, are learned, but not necessarily acted upon. Whereas discrimination is acted upon. Caveat, though, is that it may not be conscious. It may be an unconscious behavior. And so racism, in my opinion, now, like most of what we see as racism, are more subtle behaviors triggered by implicit beliefs. Beliefs that people aren't even aware of. So, for example, you're in an elevator and two big black men step in. I mean, they may very well have $1,000 suits on, but it wouldn't be surprising for people to kind of hold their purses a little bit closer. Not that they may explicitly believe anything negative about these two men, but implicitly their fears are triggered and they react accordingly. Here's an example. I'm trying to remember. Austin, when they built what's that highway that bisects it? I think it's 35. I don't know what it is. It wasn't accidental. If you look at it, it very clearly demarcates the black side of the town from the white side of the town. And while people may argue that that was a path of least resistance, it really is a form of institutionalized racism, where you basically have this giant 6-lane barrier keeping people on one side, knowing good and well that they can't cross it, right? Here's another example, right here locally. We argue about the poor not being able to work or not wanting to work, okay? But it also costs more money than people realize to own a vehicle. All right, so catch the bus. But where does the bus run in Bryan College Station? It runs here on campus to where all the students live. It also runs between here and Blinn. Anything beyond that, there's one little shuttle bus that takes a 3-hour round trip. So if you were to live, say, down by the Bryan Police Station Department or the black part of Bryan, and you needed to get to the mall, it would take you 2 to 3 hours to get there by bus. Now, we argue, but we don't have any money for a bus system. Okay. Then those priorities, though, were based upon whose needs, and whose needs were considered that important. Again, it's a reflection of our beliefs and value system. And clearly, transportation for those people way over there is not worth the expense it takes to run transportation, a public transportation system over there. But, if you ask the students here on campus, is there a bus system? They say sure, because there is one that literally evolves around their needs. How many prompt care or emergency care clinics do we have on this side of University? Do you know? Well, okay, we have the Scott and White one, which is, walk-in health clinic. We have that huge 2 or 3 of them over by Greens Prairie, right? There's one by the College Station Walmart. So, and then there's College Station Hospital and the ER. So there's 4 places between here and the Greens Prairie that I know of that people can go to if they need to. What about on that side? One. There's St. Joe's, and there's one little clinic by Blinn, but there's nothing further north. So if these people need emergency care, then they either have to find transportation somehow, and remember the bus doesn't work, go over there, try to find a cab, good luck getting a cab up there, or find their way to St. Joe's. Access to care. So on the side of town where everybody has cars, people have 4 or 5 options. On the side of town where there's no mass transit, where people can barely afford gas, there's almost no options. Again, not intentional, it just didn't occur to planners. Or maybe it did, but they knew that they wouldn't make money off of it, so they weren't going to invest in health care of people who can't afford it. Either way, what it comes down to is a disparity. Here's an example. I went to College Station, a couple parks with my kids. I like to visit parks. Hooper scoopers everywhere, right? Places where you can dump your pet's business. And people have their dogs on leashes or very well trained. And people will call the dog catcher or the police if there is a loose dog running around. Right? Okay, let's take Bryan Park. No sidewalks. No pooper scoopers in Bryan, or at least nowhere near to the extent. And the animal catching service is limited. I was at Sue Haswell Park with my kids. Pit bull running around. Looked friendly enough, but hey, any animal, Chihuahua for that matter, running around wild. So I call animal control, and they said they don't work weekends. Okay, they said to call the police. I called the police. They said they can't come and get the dog unless it bites someone first. I thought the intent was to prevent, right, injury to a child. Okay, so you want me to wait until a child is mauled, then call you. And it's not that they don't want to help. It's just that, they figure their resources are limited. But what you have there is a system set up where no one bothers to do anything about loose animals because they know that nothing is going to happen. Whereas in College Station, people are vigilant. Okay. Even the parks. Where was I? The nice parks in Bryan are on the east side of the Highway 6. All the new playgrounds. But if you look around, like not in the older established nice neighborhoods in Bryan, but in the hood part of Bryan, there are no parks. There are no parks. And you have dogs running around. I wouldn't send my kids out there to play. Alright, so if you're worried about loose animals, there's no park where they can play at. You're going to keep the kids indoors. And if they're indoors, what are they going to be doing? Probably a whole lot of screen time. Again, lack of physical activity. Okay, so short term. Short term, I would try to deal with the quick and easy environmental fixes. So the small grocery mart on the corner, right? In some of these neighborhoods that have been zoned out now, like you're not allowed to have businesses. Why not? There's nothing wrong with walking to the corner market for a head of lettuce. In fact, it takes care of two things at once. Even better if you build a sidewalk to that marketplace, right? So that everyone has access. Okay, or it means loosening up on city ordinances to allow people to sell produce out the back of their pickup in any neighborhood. Those are quick. Also, play facilities, like particularly in a place like Texas. Maybe, just maybe, there should be a way to open up school gyms, right? Where you can play and have fun and get a sweat. Yeah, those are short term. Long term, if we look back at where you have the widest educational disparities, you also have the widest income disparities, and then you have the widest health disparities. So when you look at the most literate nations in the world, you also find the highest or the best health outcomes. We have a very illiterate population. So unless we deal with some of our educational disparities, we won't be able to deal with health disparities. And in fact, in my opinion, dealing with educational disparities will fix a lot of things, because you end up then training or educating generations of kids who become adults who are capable of critical thinking, capable of viewing the world holistically and making choices that are informed by this multi-level, multi-perspective position rather than very myopic. I like to read the work by Tim Wise. And why do I like to read the work by Tim Wise? Well, actually what I like to do is refer his readings to people, because it pertains to white privilege. And it's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. No one likes to think that they have advantages that they didn't earn, because it kind of makes you feel like, you know, you're not as smart as your mama said you were. But it's the reality of things, that we really need to look at our unearned privileges, and it doesn't mean that we need to feel guilty about them. It just means that we need to acknowledge them and realize that there are people who don't achieve because they don't have those things. It doesn't mean that I'm not wonderful, but it means that they don't have the same tools that I have, so that I cannot blame them for not getting what I have when I didn't earn it.